Hi, and welcome to the Be Happy, Be Brilliant podcast with myself, Rodolfo Young. From a U.S. Army Special Operations soldier to spending 2 years in meditative silence, I'm now reaching 1 million people around the world, sharing deep insights, practical wisdom, and mindsets to cultivate happiness and success. Enjoy the podcast and be sure to share the conversation to keep the ripple flowing. So today's topic, need versus want. And what I notice is that they get intermixed a lot in a way that may not be the most benefit. We start to place the word need on the things that we actually just want. And then because we start placing need on the things that we want, when we don't get them, which is our desires, or maybe even just attachments, things that we don't want to let go of, then we feel like we're missing something because what we needed, at least what we thought we needed, is not there. And then we suffer. And so I really want to dive in today to see, can we start to dissect and introspect upon what we actually need, what that means, and what we actually want, and how we can ask for it. Because I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves the permission to ask for what we want. Instead, we use the excuse of, oh, but I need this before I can ask for this. See, right there, that's the problem. There's the obstacle already. If you have the luxury to be complaining or focused or thinking a lot about what you need, you most likely have it. I'm going to say that again. If you have the luxury to be thinking and focused and often complaining about the things that you need, you most likely have it already. Because otherwise, and this is what I found true, when you actually really need something, like it's a survival necessity, you don't spend time talking about it. You go and you get it. Right? There's no surplus of energy to be sitting around being like, well, I really need this, so maybe I'll get it tomorrow. No, if you need it, you do it. So most of the time, I think when we're talking about needs, we're actually talking about wants. And what we have to learn is it's okay to ask for it, but you got to get clear about what it is first. Can I tell you guys a story? Yeah. I love telling stories. When I'm out there and I'm silent, my stories look a lot more like clowning. Several years ago, I think I was probably, I want to say like 19 or something. So nearly 2 decades ago, I had this profound experience. It was, you could call it an enlightening awakening, an epiphany. It's a really big aha. Like you open the fridge and you saw chocolate cake, you're like, ah, the world is great. It was that kind of a feeling. And it came at a very interesting moment. I was on the phone with my sister and we were in a pretty heated discussion. About a week and a half before that phone call, I had said to my sister and to my mom, I don't like coming home because I don't feel like I can be myself. I don't feel I'm accepted. And they got really upset because they're like, well, what are you talking about? We're your family. Of course we accept you. I said, no, you don't even know me. You've known who you grew up with. My sister knew me as the brother she'd always known. My mom knew me as the son that she'd always known. But they didn't know who I was now, at that moment. And I noticed that a lot of times in our families or close communities and things like that, we get pigeonholed into these identities and roles, even in our relationships. And something starts to burn inside. A question. And it was really this question that led to this awakening. It was, who am I? And I kept asking it. And here I was on this phone call. And my sister was getting really emotional. To her, it felt like I was rejecting her, that I was disowning my family in a certain way. And all of a sudden, it hit me like everything just went, poof. And I said to my sister, I think I know why I'm afraid to really be who I am and why I think that it would offend you. She said, well, what do you mean it would offend? Are you a rude person? I said, no. It's because who I really am, who all of you really are, my true purpose, my wholeness, my everything, doesn't need you. She hung up. Then my phone rang and it was my mom. What's going on? And I explained the same to her. I don't need you. She hung up. It took me 2 years to figure out what that really meant, and it comes back to the topic of today, need versus want. I realized that I didn't need them. Didn't mean I didn't appreciate or want them in my life. But the moment that I put need in front of that, it meant I couldn't actually connect, because I was only connecting to the need. I need my family's approval to go and do this. I need my partner to say this or that to me. And all these things get in the way like walls and boundaries of expectation. And all of a sudden we can't connect in the way that we really want to with each other, because we've placed the need in between. On a more subtle level, when it comes to relationships, partnerships, business professionalships, whatever it is that you are relating in, even your relationship to self, which is very important. When we mix up these two, the need and the want, and we start imposing an expectation, a responsibility on another, or even on ourselves as a self-expectation of a need, what I've noticed when I'm working with people and in my own life is that immediately, that wall, that you could call boundary of expectation, it pushes the other away. And so rather than getting the connection that you want, or the support that you want, or the love that you're seeking as a recognition, you're pushing it out and further away. So there's this practice that we start to do of having the courage, the vulnerability, the boldness to ask for what we want. And I say that there's a vulnerability in that because it might be denied. Whether we ask it of another or we ask it of ourselves, it might be denied. And the thing is, though, until you ask, you don't know. And quite often I'd say we probably, for fear of taking that risk of it being a no, we just never ask, and then it's a definite no. Here's an easy practical one, especially with social media and kind of the way that we chat back and forth with each other. You send somebody a message. You want to connect. Facebook tells you they've seen it. An hour goes by. 2 hours go by. 3 hours. You know what's happening because you're getting anxious already. 3 hours go by, 4 hours go by, and you're like, don't they know I need them to answer? Do you really need them to answer? Or do you want them to answer? If you can make the distinction between the two, all of a sudden so much suffering that you create for yourself just vanishes. Because if you're thinking it's a need, then you're giving all your power to that other. If you're thinking that it's a need, then until it's responded or given or found or discovered or worked for or earned, you feel like you're empty and not enough, not complete, not whole. Whereas you can be 100% of who you are and want a lot of things. Those can go hand in hand. Needs cannot. Need is almost immediately the idea that something's missing that you need to fulfill. Now here's the flip side of that. Because the idea of a need is something that you need to fulfill, and as soon as it's fulfilled, you don't need it anymore. So how often have you maybe chased somebody that you were attracted to? Like, I really need this relationship. I really need them to love me back. I really need this to happen. And finally you get it and you're like, I don't need you anymore. Happens a lot. Not just in relationships, but in opportunities, in business, and all sorts of different things. Because we've confused the idea, need and want.
Do you think there's a difference in the level of disappointment between needs and wants?
Third question is there a difference between a level of disappointment between needs and wants? What do you guys think?
I think want is sort of present, so the disappointment is imminent. It's not really happening.
Huh. Interesting. So she said that want is present, so the disappointment is imminent, not really, like, you can't build up to it, yeah? What comes to my mind is this idea that in a want, it's not something that you feel entitled to. It's just something that you want. And so if you don't get it, you're not really disappointed because nothing's been taken from you. You just didn't get something. Whereas a need, there's an idea of, this is mine, somebody else has it, needs to give it to me. Or the world or somewhere or something, whatever, has to give this to me. It's mine because I need it. And in that entitlement, for sure, it's not just a disappointment, it's a fear. It's a survival instinct again. You know, when we were young and kids, at that time, we really actually needed stuff. We really did need a caretaker to provide. As we grew older and more able to respond to the world, I use those words really specifically, able to respond, it's responsibility. Normally we use the word responsibility and we all kind of like contract, we're like, oh, I don't like responsibility. But that's all it means. It's actually a very empowering word. It means you have the ability to respond, and you all do. And the more we can own that power, the less we reach out with a need, and the more we kind of go, I've got my core things taken care of. Now I can reach out for the things that I want. How many of you, as you pursue your goals, your passions, and your purpose, are doing it with the simple idea of, this is what I want to do? A few of you. How many of you are doing it with the pressure of, this is what I must do? See, there again, we have the need and the want. And I've seen it so many times, and I've definitely been guilty of it, feeling like I'm playing small, feeling like I'm not doing enough, feeling like my purpose is much bigger and I'm not getting there, and all of it was self-expectation because I made it a need, a must, that I was born into this world to do this and I need to. It's expectation. And whenever there's a need like that, whether you're the recipient of what's needed or the one that's being asked of, that pressure of expectation immediately takes all the fun out of it. It saps the energy from it. Whereas a want, if you want to go out and change the world, if you want to go and inspire a million hearts like I do, if you want to do something, then the energy's there all the time. Because it's a desire that's moving you forward. It's lifting and pushing and supporting you rather than this need that's like, I need to get to the top of the mountain because that's where the energy is that I need. Wait, how do I get there without the energy? And you're stuck. So you see somebody up on the mountain, you're like, you need to bring it to me. Doesn't work that way. It's funny, this idea around the pressures and expectations that come up and how it kind of curtails the energy. I know for me, the moment I feel like something's expected of me, I shut down, I contract, I close. And I used to get in trouble with my family actually quite often with it because let's say we were out to dinner. This is when I was older. I'm out to dinner with my family and there's a desire in me throughout the whole meal. You know what? I'm going to buy the meal today. It's going to make me feel good. I want to do it. I love my family. And then right before the bill comes, just jokingly, my mom might say, so you're getting dinner tonight, right? No. Because all of a sudden the expectation was there and everything that was mine of like, yes, I get to feel good about this became just fulfilling an expectation now. That most likely will not have the capacity or the room to have gratitude because it's only got the expectation. Whereas when you give something or you allow yourself to receive something without having asked for it or demanded it or expected it especially, you can't help but be grateful. If it was something you want, of course. Yes?
How do you change people around you to have that expectation
Oh.
from you?
Yeah. So your question And I love it because you phrase it in a certain way that the first part of the question is a whole other topic. How do we change the people around us, that's the other topic, to adopt that same idea and philosophy of not imposing expectation? And the second part is actually a really valid question. It's not about changing anybody because, one, you don't have the right to do that, nor the power, and you'll just be frustrated. What you can do, though, is be an example. There's a principle that I live by, and it's to give before it can be taken. To give before it can be taken. So if I enter a situation and there's something that even if I might know, you know what, this person might end up asking for something because they actually need it. When you can recognize the real needs in people. And to just offer it. Not to say, hey, let me give you this and it costs this much, but just offer it. Like just give it if it's something that you have the ability to do. And do it before it's asked for, because the moment it's asked for, then all that pressure and expectations and all this stuff is there. Whereas it has so much more potency when it's given from a place of generosity. Notice I said generosity, not charity. The other principle that I live by is give only to those who inspire you. That's a tricky one. I used to get in a lot of arguments around that one. Give only to those who inspire you. Now there's a big reason for this. When you give to people out of obligation, out of charity, out of need, out of expectation, you don't really feel good about it. Something feels almost like it's been taken from you. Whereas, when you give because something has inspired you, that inspiration alone was already the equal exchange that happens. Now where the problem comes in and where arguments have been had is people go, well, that sucks for all the people that don't inspire you. They're just left out on the street. No, it means now you get to be curious about people. If at first something or someone doesn't inspire you, get to know them. Find out what does. What does inspire you about that person or this situation or some place? And then from there, you'll have the capacity to give from inspiration. And because you're giving out of that, all of a sudden the whole issue of people around you having expectations isn't there because their hands are full already with what you've given them. The reason that I add the idea about inspiration first, because a lot of times we trick ourselves. We go in, we say, I'm going to give this person what they want because I'm a generous, kind person. And they better give me something back. That's not because you were inspired. That's not because you were really being generous. That's because you were after something. You felt a need. You thought you'd get it from that person, and so you gave out of manipulation. And we do this a lot. We're so focused on this idea that we need certain things when they're really wants, and because we think we need them, we expect them, and because we expect them, we don't have the courage to just ask for them as a want. So instead, we figure out sneaky little ninja ways of getting it across that, hey, I really want this, and you should give it to me. I'll bring this one in practical too with relationships. I'm a heart coach, so relationships is kind of the primary thing that I focus around. How many of you have found that whether it's been yourself, if you recognize it, or in your partner or in a possible partner, that even just the first initial connection, the interview process, that you give them everything you think they want to see at that point, for the hope that they'll fulfill things that you think you need. Really ask yourself honestly about this. Is it okay if I get really deep with you guys? If I go to a vulnerable place and something that most of us probably don't even want to look at? Okay, you guys gave me permission. Sex for validation. Sex for validation. Really, really ask yourself about this. How often have you given your body, your most sacred temple, for the hope that a validation, something you felt you needed, would be given back? And how often have you found frustration when it wasn't? It's a heavy one, but something I keep seeing. Do you know that one, just you're seeking validation is already coming from a place of feeling a need? And if instead you dropped into that ability to be an example of what you need, meaning that you give, we can call it validation or acknowledgement, recognition to others, that in that example it might be given back. That if what you're really looking for is somebody to be present with you, to listen to you, that all you have to do is be present and listen to another person. But we create these barter systems, these middle objects of things like sex. And then they become stepping stones when there's a direct path, which is to ask. A little lighter example. I had a friend back in San Diego, and really nice guy. Handsome, super kind, generous. But man, he had a lot of trouble and lack of confidence asking women out. So he came to me one day and he goes, man, I don't get what it is. I mean, I think I'm doing everything right, but I never get what I need. I was like, okay, well, what is it that you need or what is it that you want? He said, well, I want them to say yes, and I want to go out with somebody. I said, okay, well, what are you asking? He said, well, like, if I see a girl that I like, I go up to her and I'm thinking, oh, maybe we can go out for some ice cream or something. So I asked, do you like ice cream? And she says, no. And then I don't know where to go. And I said, have you ever asked just directly? Would you like to go out with me? No. That's scary. She might say no. What does she say anyway? No. Oh. See, the more things that we put in between the direct relationship, whether it be expectation, whether it be arbitrary questions, whether it be a leading up to, which I call the upgrade game, all these things of not being just directly, boldly able to ask for what you really want, end up putting more possibility of it being denied, actually. And I can't tell you how often in my own life, and especially with my clients and things that I've seen, where they tell me that they never got to where they wanted because there was a denial or a refusal somewhere along the way. And I always wonder, why were all those steps in between? Now, I know because in my own practice of this, of asking for what I want, it's not that easy. Like I'm saying, go ahead, just go ask for what you want. Well, that's challenging sometimes. But like anything, and I talked about this in my talk on confidence a couple weeks ago, we don't step into a situation with confidence. Normally we step in with courage. And then out of practice of stepping in with courage over and over and over again, we build confidence. So I might say, go out and just ask for something that you want. And you're like, it's really scary. I don't think I can do it because I've never done it before. Well, you have to practice until it becomes not so scary. And then the more confidently you can ask, the more confidently somebody can respond with their truth. And the more confidently you can accept it. See, that's the other side of it is, when we actually ask for what we want instead of demanding what we think we need, we give other people the opportunity and the freedom and the space to respond with what's real for them, rather than what they're feeling an expectation for, an obligation for. I said this to somebody the other day we were talking about all the games that we play in relationships, more so in, you call it the courtship process, right? And all these games that we play and manipulations, and I said, well, but in the end, if you had to manipulate it, if you had to deceive, if you had to do all these other things to come across in the way that they thought was what they needed or wanted or what you were going to get from it, in the end, don't you get somebody who's not really connecting to you, but rather to all the ideas and stories and promises and commitments that you've made, but they have no idea who you are. You got them to say, I love you, but to who? You? Or the picture you painted? I don't know. Personally, I want somebody to want me, because they want me, which means that I just get to keep showing up as me. And it's the same invitation I give to you. So when you ask for what you really want from that place, it's a vulnerable place, but it's also your most powerful position. It's your authenticity. It's also your most attractive quality. I love that idea. Authenticity is your most attractive quality because it's you, it's unique. Nobody else has it. Which means all this competitive behavior that goes on goes out the door. Because only you get to present these traits, this way of being and expressing. And in authenticity, there is integrity and power because you come across fully and wholly. And so you can be trusted. How many of you have a friend who's just a complete ass, just total jerk? But they own it. And you're like, I love that guy. So you're laughing because you know it's true. Because they're authentic. Whereas if you have a friend who's like all sugar-coated and sweet and is like, oh, I really love when you do this and that, you're like, I don't trust you. So asking for what you want is about first showing up as who you are. Asking for what you want is about first showing up as who you are. How many of you have gone through a challenging time that brought up a lot of emotion? Should be everybody, I imagine, yeah? It's a pretty general question there. It's like one person going, nope, never. Good. So for all of you who have gone through a challenging time, a lot of emotion coming up, did you want support? And for some of you, was support offered? Did you accept it? All the heads going, no. Interesting. When we show up as who we are, vulnerably, and often that means emotionally, because our emotion is the only thing that speaks our truth. It's one of the reasons I went silent. Words, they're deceiving. Because they go through the mind first, and they come up here, and they're like, okay, how can I phrase this that they'll really hear it? There's no way, because you don't know how their process works. But if you feel it, if you let your emotions speak, if you let yourself express from that deep authenticity that is your capacity and possibility, then it doesn't need to be understood or interpreted or analyzed. Somebody just sees it, feels it themselves, and is like, oh, I can relate. Come here, let me help you. Even just being recognized is enough in those moments. But you can't be if you hide it, right? So you asked earlier, how do we change the people around us to accept or adopt this idea of not putting expectations? Show up as who you really are, because then two things happen. They get to see what you need, what you really need, and can offer it. And they get to see what you can offer. And so then they might feel safer asking rather than demanding. That makes sense? If you show up authentically, if you show up vulnerably, people can see you for who you are. And then they can see what you need and what you can really offer. Some people aren't going to be ready to meet you there. And it's a great point, because what I've missed in sharing this right now, I've been talking about doing these things, being authentic, finding what you really want, and asking for it in a way that maybe seemed like it was to get something back. But actually it's not. I'm saying be authentic, and I'm saying ask for what you want simply so that you have expressed it, regardless of the result. And that's where other people, whether they're ready or not, that's on them. You're giving them an opportunity and the permission to explore it, but you're not there demanding anything of them. You're just expressing your side. And that's all we actually have the power to do, is to express our side of something. It's also what we have the power to be responsible in every situation. I say that because sometimes when those challenges come up, especially if it's in a relating situation, there's a side of you, even in this conscious community, there's a side that goes, yes, I fully own my side of it, and I want them to no. I fully own my side of it, that's it. What they do is what they do. It's not up to you. It's not in your power. It's not even something you can ask for. All you can do is be an example which maybe invites them into the safety to do the same. But don't make it an expectation, because then all of a sudden you have a need, which means that in that need you think you're missing something and you want it from them and you're going to be disappointed. How do we deal with rejection then? Because that can be difficult. We have to flip it, right? If we think of rejection as being something personal, that somebody said no because I'm not worth it. They never said that. Most of the time, actually I'd almost guarantee all of the time, they said no for reasons of their own. I think it's very rare that somebody gets up in the morning and thinks to themselves, you know, I'm going to say no to Frank all day long. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Just reject the hell out of him. No, we don't do that. We also don't get up in the morning and think about intentionally hurting somebody. We might have stories, though, that tell us that, oh, they did that or they did this to me, and so they deserve this or that. And that guides us, and maybe that guides them, and that's all the stories that happen. But at the core level, we're all just acting selfishly for our own survival needs. And that's okay to recognize. It's actually really important. We are all acting from our own stories. You are, and they are. So if somebody says no, or no, I can't, or I don't want to, that's their truth. Honor it, if you want yours to be honored too. And then the second part of that, in taking, we're not going to call it rejection anymore, feedback. Because that's all it was. It was an answer. It was a response. You asked a question, they said this. Is now you know, okay, that's not a possibility. What is? See, we forget that second part. Something happens, the person says no, we're like, oh, I'll never have it. There were only one possibility to whatever it is that you desired. And there's infinite possibilities. But you have to be open to it. And even sometimes, and don't take this as a way of manipulation, but even sometimes by accepting that there's infinite possibilities, the one possibility that said no changes their mind. But it has to be a sincere letting go of it, because that's what releases the pressure that might have been in the way. But if it was an authentic no, it's an authentic no. It's not going to change. Needs versus wants. So in summary, this idea that we often confuse the two. We start looking at the things that we really want in life, our desires, and we place the word need on them, and in that moment, we put so much weight upon it that our survival is dependent on what we've chosen to want. We don't always get what we want, so that means all of a sudden you fear for your survival. So realizing that most of the things you think you need are actually things that you want, you can release the need and all the pressure and weight and expectation of it, and in that moment go, oh, I want this, and it's okay if I don't get it, because I just want it, I don't need it. So now I can ask for it, because even if somebody says no, I didn't need it, I just wanted it. And I'll send you off with a practice on this, an easy way of reminding yourself the next time you're about to ask somebody for something that you want, and you're afraid of the rejection, think about it in this way. If you went and you asked somebody, hey, will you give me $1 million? Even if they say no, you're not really that disappointed, because you're just like, well, I want it. I don't really expect it, though, but I want it. And it's the same thing with everything that you can ask for. Want it. Don't expect it. Know that you don't need it, and then that'll open your appreciation for whatever does get received. Thank you. A big thank you for listening in today. You have been tuning in to the Be Happy, Be Brilliant podcast with myself, Rodolfo Young. I hope you've enjoyed the episode and that you'll share it with your friends and keep the heart ripple flowing. For more content and inspiration, you can visit www.rodolfoyoung.com.